All right, we are live. Thanks for jumping in, everyone. This is a JD Photo podcast. I believe we're on episode 4 or 5, which is super exciting. So this podcast is supported by Rode. Rode have the best gear. By Rode, if you have any needs for audio. I've been using Rode for a long time, and I was lucky enough to get a bit of support from them to get this podcast off the ground. And now you can hear how amazing it sounds because of their input. So today I have Mark Wong. Mark Wong has a few different businesses. He's a corporate and wedding videographer. He does dabble in photography a little bit, but I've had the pleasure to work with Mark, and all I can say is he's a great guy, and his work is amazing as well. He has a very kind of artistic twist to a lot of your work, so you differentiate yourself in that way, and I really appreciate that, because I think it's really difficult to do that, but you definitely do it very well, and you do it in a way where your wedding work does stand out, and I think I would love to hear how you kind of bring a bit of an artistic twist into your corporate work as well, I'm assuming, which is also really difficult to do. So I think we have a lot to explore today. So guests who are jumping in, who are watching, this is a photo and video podcast. Feel free to ask any questions. We will be answering questions as we go along, but generally we will be just having a conversation about photography and videography and where it's going. We have some really interesting topics that we're going to be covering today. So without further chat, let's get straight in. Mark, introduce yourself, mate.
How you doing, everyone? My name's Mark Wong. I have a filmmaking and photography business called Film Nostalgic with my business partner and life partner, Portia Gabauer. So
Yes.
we kind of do the photo and video thing together, chop and change and assist each other, and also work with a lot of great people like James you see here. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for jumping on. Maybe we can start with how you got into the industry. When did you first pick up a camera?
Oh, that's going back a fair way. I think as a kid, I was just hyper obsessed with my parents' like camcorder thing that we had in the early 2000s and then the 90s. It was a TEAC. I can't remember the brand,
I'm not too
but
sure. Yeah.
it's still in a cupboard somewhere. But
Those are those things, and you have the little thing, and you look through there. And you got the
with the
screen
view.
as well. Yeah, that brings me back. My parents had one of those as well. I used to play around a lot with it as well. I have heaps of videos of me as a kid, probably bum naked. You go down that that kind of rabbit hole of just childhood film tapes and stuff. God, what a time, eh? So different now.
What a time. And I think that's probably why I decided to name the business Film Nostalgic, because I found myself being nostalgic as a kid already, and nothing had even happened yet. I find myself watching VCR tapes of things that happened just 2 Christmases ago, and I'd be like, oh, back in the day. I get that feeling. So I was always a very nostalgic kid, and I liked just capturing stuff on that little camcorder. Most of the time it'd actually be my grandfather or my dad walking around with it at Christmas, and I just love rewatching that stuff. So but in more of a professional capacity, I think the first time I picked up a camera probably would have been just after high school. Was always just doing little eventy music projects for friends and things like that, and back then it was the Canon the Canon 5D Mark 2 or 3 or something like that, one of the first hallmark photo video cameras, which even today the image that camera produces is still super nice. So yeah, that's that kind of 2 answers to the same question. But yeah, the first time was as a kid with a little camcorder, but then after school was mucking around with a 5D.
Yeah, wow. Our journeys are surprisingly similar, I think. So I was introduced to photography very early on. My grandmother, who actually lived here, had just photos everywhere, man. She was like big into photography, introduced me to it. There's actually rolls of film down there that are from 2005 that I need to go develop. So I have no idea what's on them, So she they took a lot of photos, and then I got introduced to videography in high school media. So I would have been 14 years old where I started to really, play around with it. And then 18th birthday, just after high school, my parents gifted me a Canon 70D. And then I started taking photos of parties. Then I got the 5D Mark II and started taking photos of music at like Leaderville. And I did that, all through 18 and until about 19. And then started to travel and explore it more in an artistic capacity and a street photography capacity. And then went on to study university. And then that's around when I started to take it up professionally after the end of that degree, around 23. So, we're lucky that, we've been able to do it our whole lives, right? And we've been able to kind of build at this foundation and come into a field that's really kind of exploding at the moment, right? Because photography and videography is booming. Like, everyone wants it. Social media world's huge. So how have you kind of found that transition, being a kind of creative growing up, someone who's quite young, playing around, and then coming into this world where everyone just wants content, and it's just like this crazy thing that, you can get a job out of it.
Yeah, I think that the toughest part is the obviously the rise and the prominence of social media, because everyone wants the photo or the video 5 minutes ago. So, and that's
fast turnaround, isn't it, nowadays?
Yeah, that's hard for me, because I like to kind of really refine things before I put them out. Things that most people, or most clients anyway, probably won't notice. Only other photo video people will notice, but it's my natural tendency to kind of want to refine it before you put it out. But a lot of people would just rather have it quickly than perfectly. And I think it's that, the classic 80-20 thing, sometimes. But it obviously depends on the project. If it's social media focused, turnaround is kind of paramount. And the more you do it, the more you don't have to compromise on quality to get it out quickly. But yeah, I do like to look at things with fresh eyes and just polish it off a little bit before it goes out. But sometimes you just don't have that opportunity.
No.
Yeah.
I know what you mean though. Like, I'm really big with my wedding films, where I'll just like sit there and watch it, and then I'll be like, fuck, and then watch it from start to finish. You're just like always picking at it, trying to, refine it but then like a lot of my corporate work, it's like, they're just like, we just need to get it out on social media right now. And, you need to push it out so they can share their event that they did yesterday. And it's a fast turnaround. Like, the expectations in the industry, nothing can really prepare you for that fast-paced nature, and running a business as well, right? It's like, it's such a challenging thing to do. I don't know. Did you find that jump from, I guess, because you started off where it sounds like it was a very big passion, right? So maybe bring us back to your roots a little bit first. So like, how did you find that passion for video and photo?
I think, yeah, I had that fixation with the family camcorder and making memories with that as a kid. And
what did you make? What did you produce growing up?
Oh, it was literally just the family hanging out. I'm half Polish, so every second year we'd go as a family back to visit my grandparents, auntie and uncle and cousin in Poland, and I'd spend ages just watching video VCR tapes with my grandparents from previous trips and being nostalgic about that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And to be honest, most of it was not filmed by me. Sometimes I mucked around with it when I was a bit older, but it was filmed by my dad or my granddad, but I'd just be super obsessed with these videos and watching them back. So I became really passionate about, the act of capturing memories in motion. And then also my uncle from Poland, as I got a bit older, he started introducing me to films that were cult classics, like your Godfathers and your Pulp Fictions and all that kind of thing. And because even though I am a creative, I have quite an analytical brain. So I'd sit there and watch these movies and be like, why did they light it like this? Why did they cut to a close up there? How does it aid the story and reflect the character's journey? I just delved into that world. I don't know, just
it's a fascinating world, man.
Yeah.
Like that those cult classics and those like we used to call them art house cinema films. Things that, challenge narrative a little bit, or have, the text, the narrative overlays was a big thing around the 2000s, right? All that kind of stuff, and the way, a lot of those directors kind of structured narrative, and used lighting in that creative way, that shaped a lot of what I do, and gave me, analyzing how they did it as well, gave me a really deep appreciation for not only aesthetic, but how do you use aesthetic to kind of shape a scene and portray kind of feeling and mood? So yeah, I completely agree. It's a really fascinating world, and you can really break it down, can't you? And just kind of like piece it together and kind of, or I guess piece it backwards, and then go, this is why they did certain things. And yeah, so I had that experience in high school. That's kind of, our high school teacher kind of taught us these things about, movies, and how movies are kind of shaped through various techniques, that everything's intentional. It's not unintentional. And yeah, if you can break it down, and if you think about film in that way, you just have a much deeper appreciation for it, I think. And yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I think to add to that, a lot of the time the general audience doesn't know why, but that's the beauty of it, because they can just immerse themselves and get lost in it. But every decision that is made, down to the placement of an object in a background, to the lighting ratio on someone's face, to the way the shot's framed, has been purposefully and intentionally made to make you feel a certain way when you look at it, and aid the story and reflect what's going on in that character's world at the time. And that construction is, yeah, that's why I'm so passionate about it. I love that. And that's, I don't always get to do that in a corporate or a wedding scenario, because you just have to shoot what's there. But there's times where you do get to have that control, and that's when you can take it to the next level. And the audience might not always know why it looks great or it feels great to look at. But there are a lot of little decisions that get made in how you do it that allows you to arrive at that, Yeah, and that's why I love it.
Yeah, I'm the same. That's why I fell in love with it as well. And I started off in that film world, where it was all about, narrative, and narrative was huge. And then I kind of took a step back from film for a little bit and went into photography. I studied photo and design at uni rather than film, which was really interesting, because I started in film and loved film, and then went into photography. The main reason was I didn't have enough gear to do video after I left high school, and I got my 70D, and I was like, I don't have microphones, I don't have stabilizers, I don't have whatever you need to produce like really high quality films for clients. So I kind of went back to photography, on camera flash, one zoom lens and one camera body. And I was able to produce good enough work to do things like parties and stuff like that. And then from there, I went into uni and found that photography had its own whole artistic world, and you could apply a lot of what you knew in film into photography, because in a way, photography is similar to film, where it does have a narrative, but it's one frame narrative, and what you're trying to portray and create, you have to do it within one kind of image, but all those same techniques can be applied, but it's just a much more condensed way. And it almost makes the craft harder, I find. So you're obviously a photographer and videographer, and have experienced the same kind of thing. Like, what do you think the difference between photo and video is, and what do you feel like, which one's harder for you?
I think you distilled it perfectly there, is that the main difference is with a photo, you have to, well, I'm going to use that word again. You have to distill the narrative down into one frame.
Yeah.
Whereas in video, you have multiple frames to do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, which one's harder? I don't want to start a riot. But for me personally, photo's harder. Not because it requires more technical knowledge, or one is, more impressive than the other. It's just that my mind is geared towards motion. So for me, me personally, photo's harder. But that, like I said, that's nothing to do with the nature of the craft. That's just my personal. I
think photo's harder
skill
as well.
Yeah,
I think photography is a lot harder than videography. as someone who's done both for a long period of time. Yes, I've put more time into photography, but I still find photography is hard. I think videography is harder because of the technicalities behind it. You need to understand your codecs, and you need to understand your log profiles, and every log profile is different and require different exposures and different gradings, and Then, you have your whole world of like audio, and you have your whole world of, there's just so many different facets with video. It's almost like it's not a one person job. If you're going to do it really well, it requires a team of people to do it. Where photography is, it's harder because I guess the single element of it's what makes it harder is to capture a photo, and for that photo to be good, you need to get that moment spot on. You don't have any leeway. There's no breathing. Like with video, you have the movement, you have the motion, you can kind of explore the scene a little bit. But with photography, you need to be pinpoint on what you've captured and how you've portrayed it, and that's really difficult to do. It's almost like, how are you going to portray a scene in one frame rather than a scene in 20 frames? It's very different, because video, you can kind of say, well, you have this mysterious model in moody lighting kind of writing down something, and then she glances up and looks off, and kind of you have this scene. Where photography is, how do you capture that emotion in one frame? What's the pinnacle of that moment? And then you pinpoint that, and that's why I find it harder, because it's difficult to get that in one frame.
I 100% agree. I think that don't want to offend anyone, but on a technical level, perhaps videography is, there are more settings there's a labyrinth of settings there that you can get lost in. But I think from capturing your story in one frame, you have to think about a lot more, and you've literally got, one, depending what shutter speed you're shooting at, but you've got one, 200ths of a second to get that story. Whereas on the video, you can let it roll out a little bit. But what I will say about photography that is also much harder than videography, in my opinion, is specifically in the wedding context, is that there's a lot of onus on the photographer to almost be a secondary wedding planner. Advise on the timeline, advise on photo locations, the timing of when the couple shoot should take place to take advantage of light. These are all back of house administrative duties that fall on the photographer, whereas the videographer, they more or less rely on the photographer for all of that. They rock up and they are able to take advantage of the photographer's beautiful vision. Obviously, as a videographer, you do get an opportunity to do some directing as well, but usually priority is given to the photographer. And I think that gets slept on a bit, is the planning element for wedding photographers, and the fact that more falls on them rather than the videographer. Where it does get harder for video, I believe, is in the edit. Yeah. I think that's where more hours are demanded of video generally, because it's not just about making the images match. They have to flow next to each other in motion to create a narrative, rather than having a gallery of, well, we were at prep and then there was the ceremony and then the couple shoot and then
why do you think photography is? Why do you think that planning falls on photographers? Why do you think that's happened? Because it's very unusual that, because I know as a photographer for weddings who also does video equally. I do both. I find that when I act as the photographer, I need to plan the date perfectly, and everyone's looking at me, like, what's happening next? And I'm like, I need to be this extroverted, awesome dude who's like managing the whole thing. And if there's no planner there, I need to be freaking telling them, we're about to do this. It's crazy. But why do you think that happens?
I think the reason for that is the photographer often, I think, nobly takes it upon themselves, because a lot of people that aren't familiar with the craft don't understand that to make the images look, how they look on your website, things need to be done in a certain way at a certain time, particularly with light. So you can get a photographer who'll be like, oh, just get your planner to send me the schedule and I'll rock up and shoot it. But the images are probably not going to be on the level that you'd expect. And that's why I say that photographers often take it on themselves, because they want to make it look as good as possible. So they then take it upon themselves to advise the client, well, perhaps consider having your ceremony a little bit later, because the light will be nicer and it'll be kinder. You won't be getting harsh shadows across your face from the full sun. It's little gems of knowledge like this that take the imagery to the next level. But ultimately, if your timeline isn't conducive or timelines and locations aren't conducive to nice imagery, the photographer still takes the blame.
Yes. And that's really well said. And I'm just going to say, if you are a wedding, or if you're a newly engaged couple and you're about to hire a photographer, first red flag is they're not agreeing to do any planning with you, because like you said, planning is enormous. You need to have good planning in order to get the good photos, because there's so much more behind the scenes, and actually have this industry knowledge of how we're going to be there in the right place at the right time in order to get the photos that you want. Because it's not always as black as white as you think. It's not, we just point the camera and we capture the photos. No, we need to be in the right spot with the right lighting in order to produce those photos that you see on my website, which are usually the golden hour or the dusk photos, often coupled with flash or natural light. Like, that takes a lot of planning and a lot of work to actually get. It's not just we rock up in a spot with a camera. Like, no, we need to do a lot in order to be able to get those images. And if the photographer's not going to plan with you, you're probably not going to get those photos, because you probably aren't going to know how to get those photos, right? And I think you said it well. Like, a lot of people like myself who are really passionate about photography, and we want to give our couples these photos, we will take it upon ourselves to plan with them and to be like, this is where we need to be in order to get these photos. Maybe if it's in a wilderness location and you want to get some like really nice golden sun on the leaves, you'll probably plan it a little bit early in the day compared to dusk, because the sun's higher and it's hitting the trees. I'm thinking like a down south wedding or something, so you can get that lighting through the trees. Whereas if you're in a local city at a beach, you might wait till it's a bit lower, so it's hitting the horizon, so you're not getting any glare coming through. If you're on the coastline or something, there's a lot to think about, as a photographer, because if you're in the wrong spot at the wrong time, there's not really too much you can do, like you're thinking classic midday sun right above you, straight down, and no trees around. Like, what are you going to do?
That's it.
Bring out the diffuser.
A lot of photographers make hard light look great, though.
You can make hard light look great,
but it still requires planning.
But you're significantly limited in what you can do in hard lighting, I find. Like, for example, like a lot of my work might have really artistic use of flash photography, and the reason we can use the flash photography is because we're taking these photos during the blue hour, where I can use my lightweight speed lights in order to produce and control the scene. If I was to do that in midday, my flashes would not compete. I would need the 600s, and there's no way I'm bringing the 600s to a wedding.
Like bulb.
We couldn't set it up in time. So being able to be in the right spot at the right time, like let's say you're talking golden hour or dusk, your creative freedom explodes. You have so much more potential in order to create really nice images, whereas in the middle of the day, I feel like that scope is really refined. It's like we can only take photos within this capacity rather than this capacity because of the lighting. And yes, we can still create nice images, but it's what type of images do you want? And a lot of the time it's those images on your website, because that's what you're selling. And how do you approach couples who are like that, who might come to you and go, we really want these great photos, but this is the timeline of our day. Can we get these photos? Like, I don't know. What do you do?
It's a fine line. You want to give your advice and recommendations without being too not aggressive, but too assertive, because it ultimately is their day, and you also don't want to take up their whole day just doing photo shoots. They want to be present. They want to be with each other and their families and friends and enjoy their time, which should ultimately take precedence before anything, even photos. So all you can really do is recommend, and if they just decide to go against your recommendation, you just remind them, obviously happy to do that. However, just keep in mind, we won't be able to achieve this golden hour look, for example, because you would rather be at your cocktail hour or have your reception start then, which is completely fine. Like I said, the priority is for them to enjoy their day. But you just try and make it work. If your advice is ignored, what can you do?
And my advice is ignored all the time. I have couples where I sit down and I'll plan with them, and then we'll go to the wedding day. We'll do a complete opposite thing. But at the end of the day, it is their wedding day, and I guess you're just trying to take the oomph off you. You know what I mean? You don't want that to come back on you, and for them to then, why didn't you get us this image? And then it kind of falls on you. It's a bit of a joke, but I don't know. Have you had any bridezillas kind of?
I've been lucky enough to not have a bridezilla.
I haven't had to.
No,
actually, I've had a couple, but we won't get into it. Usually, I find that the times you end up with a bridezilla is when you don't take that advice, what you just said about the planning, and you're not transparent with your couple, and you're a yes man. You know, so they'll be like, "Can we get these photos at 2:00?" And you're like, "Yes." and you try and you don't, because it's impossible, and then it falls back on you. So I think transparency and honesty is really big in the planning phase, and you actually be honest with your couple, and you tell them what you can produce, and you might lose them as a client, but it's better to lose them as a client than having them come back and be like, "How dare you not get the photos that we wanted," because you were honest about it.
Yeah, and that's why I just take the approach of ultimately. I'm there to give advice, and if they want to go in another way, I just, advise them that these are the risks of going that way. You know, like, I'm happy to do the photos at 2:00, or happy to do that part of the shoot at 2:00. However, it's going to look like this rather than this. And as long as you're happy with that, then I'm happy with that. Yeah. Because we can make it work. Like, just because you don't have ideal lighting, you can work around it and use your environment to work around it. You know, you can use the shade, for example, or do something with dappled light, having the sun coming through the leaves, even though it's the middle of the day, and create some cool dappled light. But not everyone likes that. And if they've seen your website or your portfolio and they like specific images, that's when they have this expectation, rightfully so. But because they don't fully understand the craft, they might not know it needs to be done at this time, or this place and not this place. Yeah.
Completely agree. Well said. I think while we're on the topic of lighting, what do you think the difference between photo and video lighting is?
Well, I think it's a fairly rudimentary answer, but just flash and constant, I guess, right? Obviously,
do you know there's a difference between the quality of light between a constant and a flash?
Educate me.
There you go. An LED light like these will produce a more matted kind of light, where a flash will produce a more crisp kind of light. So you get those really pure whites, and they kind of almost sheen the skin, where an LED light will kind of almost be more of a bluish hue. So less of a white, more of a blue, and it will kind of like I guess merge into the skin a little bit more and be more matte. It doesn't have that glow and that sheen. I'm actually going to do like a little tutorial, I think, on it, because not many people know it, but there is a really distinct difference between the two. There's like, and depending on what look you want to get, you can either use your LEDs or your flash. But it's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, right. No, I didn't know. I'll look forward to the tutorial video. But to be honest, the flash photography is not my forte. Like, obviously I can do it for events and things like that, but a lot of off-camera flash work is not my area of specialty. So I more deal with constant video lights. I think that what I find the biggest difference is, though, you can, with a constant, you can see it constantly. You can. Whereas the flash, you have to
visualize it, and then
yes, you really have to understand the technicality behind the settings, and then fire it. And if you didn't get it right, perhaps the moment's gone.
Yep.
Or you can fire a test and then go from there. But the more you move around, the more your settings might need to change. So
flash photography is probably the hardest thing I've ever got into, off-camera flash photography. I've been doing it for almost 10 years now. So I've been doing it a long time, slowly piecing away at it. But out of all the different things I've learned in photography and videography, the hardest has been lighting, I think. think lighting's really difficult, specifically off-camera flash lighting, because you kind of need to understand how your strobes are going to work, position them, and then take the frame. Especially at a wedding where you have like 5 minutes, you need to see the scene. I think there's a difference between photo and video lighting, though. Fundamentally, I feel like we light the scenes a little bit differently. Where photography, we're often looking for more balanced lighting, and lighting that's maybe sometimes a little bit more obvious and dramatic. Where video, you're kind of trying to make the light blend with the scene more. Do you find that as well? There's like when you're producing like video projects, you kind of light the scene, and you kind of don't want the lights to be obvious. You know, you kind of want them to be, I don't know, like it looks like it's real natural light coming in. You're kind of trying to emphasize the natural light in the room.
Yes, but there's also continuity to keep in mind, because if you're cutting from multiple angles, you can't have the light be too different. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So if you got your key, your fill, and maybe a backlight that's lifting them off the background, and then you go to change angles, and it might not be ideal. You still have to work within those parameters, because you can't have the shadow on one side of the face cut to a different angle, and then you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a continuity aspect to it too.
So do you change your lights depending on the cut you're going to do? So let's say you're filming a straight on shot for a video, and you've lit it this certain way, and then you're going to change to another angle. Do you move the lights to...
If it looks better and doesn't compromise the continuity, yeah, and you've got the time to, of course.
Yeah.
Like not all scenarios permit the time, but yeah, for sure. If you've got the time to move the light and not compromise that continuity, it looks better, then do it. As long as it doesn't shatter the illusion when you cut to the other shot.
Yeah, that's a pretty high level use of light. Yeah, that's really interesting. I definitely have found, because the way light like works when you're lighting a scene, it's the camera position does affect like how that's going to look. And I definitely have noticed that I've lit a scene before, and I've done like multiple shots, and it doesn't look like it's from the same lighting setup because I've moved the camera. And yeah, I haven't ever gone to the extent of actually repositioning the lights to make it have that continuity. But yeah, definitely something that I need to probably think about. Yeah.
Yeah. Like for example, even right now, like looking at the ratio of light on your face, I reckon it would look much different shot straight on. Like it probably looks really great from over there, but if it was straight on, the ratio might be a bit off. Like this side of your face would be much darker than that side, but because the camera's over there, it's only getting your bright side.
Yeah.
Whereas front on, the balance might be off. You know what I mean? But
do you know the scientific formula to the eyes picking up and understanding light? No, I don't either. You probably should.
I know some people that would though, but yeah.
Shout out to those people.
Shout out to those
I think we have a view at the moment. I think it's Wild Red Media. Wild Red Media, thanks for jumping in and for watching. Do you have any questions for us? We're photographers and videographers. Mark is a specialist in commercial and wedding videography. He has a lot of knowledge. So if you have any questions, we're going to be diving into a few audience-led questions as well. I've kind of neglected the audience a little bit, so I kind of just want to reach out to you guys and say, please feel free to answer questions. Hang around. We are going to be diving into a lot of really interesting topics. Try and hang in there. Sup, DJ Coob? Any questions on videography? Please feel free to ask away, mate. We're kind of diving into a lot of different topics at the moment and kind of exploring the wedding and commercial photography and videography industry. Mark Wong is an expert in videography. He's a very talented guy. He's been doing it his whole life, since 10 years old or something. So this guy's a wealth of knowledge, and we're going to start picking his brain even more. All right, so we've covered the difference between photography and videography. What do you feel like the technical differences are between the two? So there's clearly tech differences between the two. What do you think the differences are there?
Well,
which one do you need more gear for?
Video.
How much gear? What's like the minimal amount of gear you need for video, in your opinion?
I think that if you want to shoot professionally, you can go crazy, and gear is a rabbit hole that I've been guilty of going deep down. But
we'll go down to that in a second.
But
we'll go down that next one.
Sure. I think if you've got a mirrorless camera with 10-bit color.
Yep. So 10 bits the min?
For me. Yeah,
I
for me,
think 10 bit's the min. 8
Yeah.
bit shit. I have an EOSR. It's just been sitting in the closet for the last 4 years now. It's an 8 bit. It doesn't work.
Get rid of it.
It's on Byte. It's on Marketplace. Wild Red Media has said, how do you manage audio throughout the day? I'm guessing you're talking about wedding videos. So what do you do for wedding videos and managing the audio there? What's up, Nana Photo Studio? Thanks for jumping in. We are answering community questions. Feel free to ask anything that you have on mind. We are videographers and photographers. Mark is an expert in videography. He's a wedding and commercial videographer. He's been doing this his whole life and has a wealth of knowledge. We're just about to explore some... I think she's gone. Bye.
James is being very kind when he says I've been doing it my whole life. A camcorder, running around with a camcorder as a kid doesn't really count. But
it opens way to a lot of artistic knowledge. I think
James, you're very kind.
All right, let's answer Wild Red Media's question before they jump out. So Wild Red Media asks, how do you manage audio throughout the day?
For me?
For a wedding day. Let's focus on weddings. So how do you manage audio?
Okay, so this is a coincidence, but I use my Rode,
Rode's the best.
wireless.
My Rode.
Unlike James, I'm not lucky enough to have any support from Rode, but it would be welcomed. But I do use Rode Wireless Pros.
They're amazing,
and they're great. Like basically, I have one directly. I have the receiver just direct to camera. So I'm getting an audio feed straight to what I'm recording. And I usually have an A cam that's recording the whole time during speeches or ceremony. So I know that when I'm around doing B-roll, I know the whole audio feed is going to that A cam. Mm-hmm. And then with my B-roll, if I miss a moment, I know it's on the A cam with the audio. On top of that, the actual mics have onboard recording. So as a safety measure, I also use onboard recording just in case the feed interferes or audio is so finicky. Like there's so many things that can go wrong. So just in case, I use the onboard recording on those Wireless Pros as well, and usually just have a lapel mic going up the groom's jacket and make it as less visible as possible. So yeah, long story short is one feed to camera, one feed on board on the wireless, and that's how I do it.
Yeah, I do mostly the same. So I use the Rode Wireless Pros as well. I have 2 of those because I find sometimes if I shoot a large Christian wedding or something like that, and they have like speeches over here, then the celebrants over there, and the grooms over here, there's like 3 different sources you need to get audio from. So I find like sometimes I need the 3rd mic. Sometimes I might even need the 4th mic. I haven't needed the 4th mic yet though. I ran it that way. I usually have two of those Wireless Pros so I can cover everything. On top of that, I have a Zoom recorder which I plug into a speaker. That's my backup source in case something else fails. But the Rodes are pretty good. You're probably not going to have I've never had them fail on me. Knock on wood.
Sorry, I forgot to mention. You just reminded me. The other trick I love to use is a mic sleeve.
Yes.
Mic sleeves are awesome. Just this little sock for the mic that you put on, and you pop the Rode in there as well. And that way, if your Zoom that's plugged into the sound desk, which I also use Zoom for that too, if that feed is compromised just because, you might get a uncle who's had a few too many giving a speech right into the microphone screaming at the top of his lungs, at least if that sound is compromised from the desk, then you've got that. You
got your Pro set to like a minus 24 dB or something like that.
With a pad or with a 32-bit float, you usually should be fine. Yeah. Like it won't clip even if they're yelling, but it's just having that backup audio feed. Yeah. And
you often can't stuff audio up. If you stuff audio up, you're done. You're fired.
It's the most underrated component of video because everyone thinks of the vision, but if the audio is bad,
you need the audio, man. Because when you're watching a video, you're listening to it so much as well. It's like 50-50 in my opinion. Before we jump onto the next point, I'm just thinking about. I have a problem with my wedding films. So I run usually 3 cameras for a ceremony. I have my A cam, which has the Rode receiver going into. Then I'll have a B cam, That usually just has an on-camera mic, and then I have a C cam. So I have 3 cameras. My A cam's usually tripod straight down the middle or something like that. My C cam is usually onto the bride or someone else, and my B cam's my moving cam. So the B cam's usually getting B-roll, and the A and C cam I kind of, have a primary angle and then a secondary angle. And I call them A, B, C in that order because A is kind of, my first track, B is my second track, and then C I kind of just, if I need to tie in anything else I have on there. It's probably not the most organized way to label them. And also because I've listed them in expensive, how much each camera body cost me. So my A cam is almost expensive and it goes down. Okay, so let's stay on track there. So my problem is syncing. I hate syncing, man. You know what I mean? Like I chuck my, with my receiver, that one's fine. But then it's when I want to sync my primary footage and then sync my B and C camera with the on-camera mics, they're just bloody so hard to line up. How do you get around syncing? Have you got any tips or tricks that I can steal from you?
I mean, beyond zooming in as far as you can on the timeline and lining the audio wave up, beyond that, there's not much you can do because the timeline only...
we need time code. Corey Allen Wright. Shout out to Corey Allen Wright.
True.
He uses time code, and he had these sync things, octopus syncs. I think I forget what they're called. They're wicked, but they're an extra device you need on your camera. And I'm like, surely Rode has some kind of time code sync in there, but I don't know. I need to explore it. Rode.
I think they do, but now that you say that, it reminds me some like, or most of the editing softwares have like a auto sync now.
DaVinci Resolve have it, but it sometimes fails, especially using the on-camera mic. And if you just kind of, you don't have especially like a larger microphone on it, it's really hard to line them up. So I'm trying to work out a way to do it. I'm thinking since I have 2 Rodes, my best strategy would be just put one lapel, one receiver for my A and B Rode mics, and then those should be able to sync up easier using the auto sync feature because the audio is closer, and then it's just getting your other camera. But one thing I do is I let all cameras run the entire time, so I just need to sync it once. Because if you're starting and stopping, you're just gonna be there for ages, man, trying to line it all up. So I have all 3 cameras, start them all at the same time, one sync, and then you're done. And yeah, it's gonna be larger data, but it's worth the time.
No, for sure. The thing is that I don't often deliver full cuts of the ceremony.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't. I actually most of the time advise clients against it, even though it's a hurt to me. It's cheaper to have to. So.
What's up, guys? Anyone who's just jumped in, we have 3 viewers in. Feel free to ask questions. We are answering community questions at the moment. Mark is a very talented videographer in weddings and corporate events. Sorry, corporate commercial. I think you do corporate events as well. But feel free to ask questions, guys. We do want to answer community questions. We have had a few people jump in, and we are sharing some knowledge around weddings and commercial. So you were saying about...
What was I saying?
Oh, no.
No, that's
I always do.
No, I actually... So... completely. If I'm delivering a full cut of the ceremony, I will roll the whole time as well on all cameras. But typically, I don't deliver the full cut of the ceremony. I mean, it is in my interest to because it's a little bit of extra cash. But I just like to be honest with my clients. I say, like most people never watch it again.
That's so interesting, different to my clientele, because usually my clientele don't want to highlight movies.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, which is really interesting. Like I shot a 80th birthday, believe it or not, and they didn't want a highlight film. They just wanted the raw footage of the speeches, and they were willing to pay top dollar for it. And it was really interesting to see, because I was like, the highlight films on my website for events are kind of the selling point, and that's what I thought. But yeah, they wanted the raw film, and that was really unusual. So yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I like my advice is usually look, the full ceremony goes for half an hour or whatever it is. I think there'll be. You'll seldomly sit down for half an hour to watch the full ceremony. Whereas if you have a tidy 5 to 8-minute highlight video that still has speeches and things like that in it.
Yeah.
I'd like to drive my video with the speech and vowel
Yeah,
content.
I agree. I do the same. Yeah, you kind of tie those into it and have some kind of narrative and almost make it a bit like an emotional roller coaster, right?
Make it a narrative as opposed to just rolling through the whole ceremony. I actually advise my clients that like they probably don't need. Everyone's different. Obviously, you want what you want, but I find most people don't.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it's the age you sell to as well, because that 80th birthday I did, that was quite an old clientele. And the older weddings I do, I notice it's not really much about the highlight film, but then the younger weddings I do, they're all about the highlight films. And that's what I'm all about. I love doing those highlight films. I hate providing the ceremonies. I do include it. Definitely include a ceremony start to finish in all my packages. But I don't necessarily include the other parts of the day. I don't sell them as add-ons. I base it on time. So kind of, if you book 6 hours, we're going to have time to do a ceremony setup. If you book 8 hours, we might have a time to do a multicam for speeches. If you do 10 hours, we'll have enough time to do multicam setup for the ceremony, first dance, your speeches, and whatever other formalities you got. And, I kind of base it on that. And I include the setup time as part of it. But I know some other videographers, like maybe yourself, they do... this is the package for the highlight film, and then, it's a $1,000 add-on to have, all of them. It's a $500 add-on to have this add-on, it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of prefer it that way, just because depending on the add-ons, you might need to pull in an assistant, which is when, it drives your costs up, and then you might need to...
I have an assistant every job.
Pass that on. But for me, I like the highlight because it allows you to hit all the emotional notes, tell the story of the day, and it's what's going to be watched again.
I completely agree.
Yeah, so
I completely agree. I'm big on the highlights as well. I think they're the pinnacle of videography. They're the best of what we got. Yes, we can provide you with the other stuff, but the highlight films are where it's at. Get a highlight film. You're probably not going to watch a ceremony video again. Thanks for jumping in, David Broadway. Really appreciate it. Fist bump out to you. Shout out Gob or GB. I can't read your name from here. Sorry, mate. If you have any questions on photography and videography, we do have an expert in weddings and commercial on right now. Please feel free to ask any questions, and we will drop some valuable knowledge to you, mate. Broadway, do you have any questions, mate? Any questions at all? He says, nice audio. Fist bump and fire. Fist bump back to you, mate. Have no idea who's in here right now. I can't really see, but please feel free to ask questions. We are answering community questions as we go along. That was a really interesting dive into weddings and the difference between photography and videography. Let's get into gear. Let's talk about gear. What do you feel like? So let's stay on the topic of lighting, because I personally think lighting is... So I had Luke Johnson on. You obviously know Luke Johnson.
Yeah.
We shot his wedding together. Great day, by the way. That's where I got to really see your professionalism, and I really valued what you did on the day. To be honest, I was quite impressed, because it's hard to find good videographers. And it's not easy. It's not easy to find good professionals as well. And you did really good in all aspects. But
thank you, mate. You're too kind.
What I was going to dig into was lighting. So. I personally, so what Luke was saying is a photograph or a video scene is made up of 3 fundamental things. It's made up of the moment, it's made up of the composition, and it's made up of the lighting. So you need to have a good moment, you need to have a good composition, and then you need to have good lighting. I think a lot of people might think composition is the most important, or maybe even moment. Like moment's probably the most important. I think probably moment's the most important, but ultimately I think lighting's the most sophisticated and the most complex of the 3. I think lighting is probably the hardest thing to wrap your head around and understand fully. And lighting probably, in a way, can be a little bit more important than moment, because if you have no light, how are you going to even get the moment through the sensor? You know what I mean? You need to have some sort of lighting there. So I'm actually personally obsessed with lighting. I think lighting is the bread and butter of photography. It's everything to do with images, and you really need to understand lighting in order to be what's considered a photographer. And a photographer, let's say a director or photographer, we're talking videographer, photographer, anyone who's kind of using cameras or constructing scenes. So yeah, what's your thoughts on gear? What's your thoughts on lighting? What's the most important gear for lighting? And where do you sit with that?
So I think that I think I have to say that the moment is the most important
Moment's the
because
most important. Yep.
I'm not trying to be contentious or disagree with you, but
That's all right.
I feel like if the moment, I mean, if you have actors and things, of course, like the moment should be able to be there and be repeated, and then you can get the lighting right. But if you're in a scenario that's more documentary, then you don't have a choice about that moment unfolding or not. To an extent, you can evoke it, I suppose, or.
But no, you're right. If you're in a situation like a wedding and you miss the you miss the first kiss, you're not going to repeat that. You know, it's gone. The moment's gone.
Yeah.
But you need I guess you need to have. Look, I think that's in extreme scenarios. You know what I'm talking about. Is if there's no light, you're not going to be able to capture it. But yes, I agree. I think in most scenarios, you need the moment. Mm-hmm. The moment, if you miss the moment, you're kind of stuffed.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I shoot on an FX3.
1 second. What's up, guys? Jumping in. Feel free to ask any questions. We are answering community questions. We're just diving into the importance of lighting in video and photo and talking about gear, essential gear that we need to produce beautiful images. Feel free to ask questions. We are answering community questions. What's up, Geordie? Thanks for jumping in. And anyone else here at the moment, feel free to ask away. If you are photographers and videographers, Mark is an expert in this area and can answer any questions that you guys have. Continue, my man.
I'll blush every time he calls me an expert, eh?
Own it.
So look, yeah, I think that the moment is the most important thing, and I think lighting and composition are more technical but secondary. You always have to be there for the moment in a documentary scenario, because you can only do so much to evoke the moment. You don't want to be too intrusive, obviously. So I think that having a high base ISO on my camera is really nice. Like the
A9? No, the FX3.
FX3. Yeah, I shoot on an FX3 and the second base is 12,800.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I've had people come up to me at things where it's, you know, at events and things at night where it's super dark, and they're like, what are you doing with an ND filter on your lens at this time? Like, do you even know what you're doing? I'm like, man, the base ISO on this thing's 12,800. I'm at f2 because I want some
depth
bokeh, and then like you got to put ND on the middle of the night, and so having that high base ISO is nice because even if the lighting is horrible, and this beautiful moments unfolding in front of you, you can still get it. And it obviously would be nice to have beautiful light in there, but sometimes there's not a lot you can do. So in event scenarios, for me, I think a bit differently. I think that the moment and the composition takes precedence, and if I can influence the lighting, I will. But it's probably the third one on my list, unfortunately. But it sounds like for you, it's higher.
Yeah, I think lighting's really important for me. I think when I say lighting's important, and I think moment does take precedent in a lot of this time. You know, especially let's say we're photographing a ceremony, you definitely want to have the first kiss captured, and you can't miss that. If the lighting's not good, you still need to capture it. But what I think about a lot is and when I'm working in the field, even on something like a wedding, is I'm looking at the scene and I'm going, right, here's the moment, here's the composition I'm going to use. What's the light doing at the moment, and how can I use the light to kind of reinforce the moment and reinforce the composition, and kind of use light to that creative advantage. And it might just be as simple as finding a different angle where the light's kind of coming in on the side, and you know, maybe it's a very introspective moment where the groom's tearing up because the bride's saying their vows, and rather than shooting that front on, I might see the moment and I might go, well, the light's coming in on the side. I can see a really nice black and white image here where, you know, maybe we just have the light just hitting the side of the face and we're just illuminating that tear, and we're kind of reinforcing the moment, and we're using the composition to frame this narrative in the scene. And that's kind of how I think about it a lot of the time, but it's very difficult to do on the fly. So,
yeah, actually, you've changed my mind. I think that
there you go.
I think composition for me still moment takes precedence, but lighting and composition, because when you describe the angle change, I actually do that a lot as well, because I'm thinking about when I am framing the shot, I am simultaneously thinking about the lighting of it as well. I think when I said that it was a third priority, I meant more introducing new light sources
okay,
into
yeah,
the
yeah,
scene
yeah,
that you don't have time to do because it's documentary event that's unfolding before you.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're just manipulating the light that's already there, I think you can simultaneously do that with the composition, and then they're equally come after the moment. But yeah, for me, the moment takes precedence. So yeah.
Yeah, but they're all kind of interrelated in a way,
Yes.
aren't they?
Yeah.
And ultimately, depending on what you're shooting and what scene you're in, they're going to have different levels of priority. What I've taken away from having these conversations with people is as artists, we kind of need to analyze the scene and try and construct something from it on the fly, and that's ultimately what comes from it, and that's a very hard thing to do as an artist. It's actually it's a lot more challenging than people think, and when you're in the field shooting, let's say a wedding, how much is running through your head at any given point?
Oh, it's just hyper focused, but I find everything comes in threes, right? Like you just said, moment, composition, lighting, and then your camera's shutter speed, ISO, and aperture, right? I feel like everything's coming in threes in the photo video world. I don't know why.
Yeah. The rule of thirds.
and rule of thirds, like
stops in increments.
That's right. And
1/3.
So I think I break it down to that again, is like how much is running through my head is the the vision, the audio. Am I getting feeds on that? And then the third thing is back to that moment, and where am I now, and where do I need to be next? So yeah, those are the three things that run.
I think that one's really big. Is where do I need to be next? I think that's huge with weddings, and that comes back to planning, which I think is really important. Is if you're going to actually shoot a wedding successfully, you need to have that planning down packed, and you need to know exactly where you're going to be next, because otherwise you're going to start fumbling over your stuff, and you don't have a second to fumble, because you need to be hyper focused in every moment, and really analyzing those scenes and thinking, how am I going to kind of construct this scene to say what I want to say. Let's bring it back to lighting. So let's talk about your favorite technology. What have you got, man?
I mean, to be honest, nothing too crazy fancy in terms of lighting. I just run the Amarans like we've got here, just constants. They have some cool settings on them. I like being able to use the app wirelessly, and because you just waste so much time running around your set changing like light intensity, color, temperature, whereas you can actually just stand back and use your phone to wirelessly change the intensity of light. That's super handy. And then the other big one I think is having like a 4x6 or 6x4 diff to fly in the full sun, just to diffuse the sunlight, because a lot of the time corporate clients want to do shoots.
Yeah, right outdoors in the full sun. You just need to put something above their head.
That's right. Outdoors, full sun, middle of the day, business hours, piece to camera. And then
how do you hold those
that's
up?
an essential.
Do you just use like a C stand and you kind of stick it above their head?
Yeah, two C stands for safety.
For those who don't know what we're talking about those 5-in-1 reflectors, or the actual just a shimmer fabric diffusion. The 5-in-1 reflectors have a similar type of material. That's probably what most people are familiar with. It's that when you take your outer layer off, you have that inside kind of layer, which is just a diffuser piece of fabric, and it kind of diffuses the light that goes through it. So you can chuck that above people, you can get really soft light coming through. And if you do that outdoors, then you can kind of balance the scene. So you can have that really nice crisp background, but you can have really soft lighting kind of falling, and then balance it with another reflector or something like that.
That's right. Yeah. So I was actually talking about it does a similar thing, but the 6x4 frames that you can either Velcro, or my system's like a cylindrical pop system. You just pop that hazy white diffusion fabric filter on, and then just even out the light of the sun. And
you got little kind of mounting things on the end, and you stick those into
C stands. C stands.
So you got the full kit. You got a big one.
yeah. But I mean, sometimes you're not afforded the time or the budget to have an assistant help you set that up, because it's not simple. It's not as simple as just putting it up, you got to unfold it, clip it in.
It's a long time,
Yeah,
man, eh?
yeah. So if you're not afforded that capability, the next best thing you can do is shoot in the shade. But you have to be very strategic about your background, because if the background's too blown out, it doesn't look that nice. So
you get really restricted, especially when you're shooting something like a corporate and they're like, we want that building and that logo and we want that to be the frame. You need to think on the fly of how to do it. And these lights, they're not going to work, man, because 200 watt, 400 watt, you're not going to compete with the sun. You know what I mean? You could chuck a softbox on there. You're going to burn your softbox off if you use something like a 1200 to compete with the sun.
That's
That's the challenges with LED lighting is, if I put a 600 watt flash on, that thing's going to be way brighter than the sun. If I chuck a 600 watt LED on, that thing is going to not even, it's kind of just going to come through a little bit.
Yeah.
So it does get really difficult with video lighting. But yeah, the best thing you can do is just use the natural light to your advantage, I think, and diffuse it and to bounce it as well. I don't think I haven't worked out a way around it otherwise. Yeah,
look, if you don't have the requirement to put logos and things like that in, and you just need a nice talking head, but they're a politician, for example, been in this scenario a couple of times where they're such busy people, you've only got them for 5 minutes. And you can't, you don't have time to set up a full lighting rig. So you put them under a tree and then you're looking at the background and it's all blown out. The best thing what I do is just put a polarizer on to try and dull the background a little bit. Open up the aperture because, people love a buttery background and just do what you can to take the focus and diminish the distraction of that quite bright background. But again, ideally you fly the frame and you diffuse the sun, and then it'll look great and the background will look nice too. So, yeah.
Agree. Yeah, that's a really interesting technique that you've got there. But yeah, it makes sense. You chuck an 85 on or something, blow it open, get that bokeh kind of look with the blown out background, and I'm guessing that's what you're kind of saying. Yeah,
exactly. Because people are less likely to focus on the back.
You like 85 mm?
I love 85.
Man, it's such a good focal length, eh?
So good. I'm very tempted to get the new version of the Sony's G Master 85. Just because I've got the Mark 1, but with the autofocus mechanism is so loud and very hunty. It hunts a lot, which is fine for photo. But
same with these Sigma lenses. They're great for the photo, but they just struggle on the video front. Canon's just released their VCM mode lenses, which are the video specific lenses. They have a 24, 35 and 50. And I'm really thinking about picking up some of those because they just have that, there's no focus breathing. So Canon, but they're just expensive, man. Canon bodies and Canon lenses are really up there. I think G Masters are a little bit cheaper. I'm not too sure.
I saw this reel the other day where they were like,
what's up, Jed?
Jed, how we going, Jed? I saw this reel that someone was like, GM doesn't stand for G Master. It stands for gangster mode lens or got money lens.
Got money lens,
so I don't know if they're cheaper than the Canons, but
a Canon 50 1.2, which I really, really want to pick up. But you see, I've just been putting money into marketing, unfortunately, rather than gear, because it's what you kind of got to do. But it's a bit unfortunate. But I really want to pick one up either way, and they are they're 3.8K.
3.8, okay. So the Sony equivalent's only 2.4.
Yeah. So it's a lot nicer. Got to jump over to Sony, and the Canon 85 1.4 or 1.8, which is just a beautiful lens, is I think it's 4.5 from Camera Electronics.
Okay. Yeah, so they are a lot more expensive.
That one there, the 70-200, that was 4.8. So
wow.
So it adds up, man.
I didn't I'm glad. Look, I don't want to start a Sony Canon debate. I love both.
I love both as well, man.
The only reason, to be honest, that I'm with Sony was at the time when I started taking things more seriously.
They had it in the game, man. So Sony was so far ahead in 2018. That was far out, man. They released the A7 and Canon had the Mark IV. And then they released the R, which was like a failure of a camera. I don't have it out here, but it was good. It had the same sensor, but in terms of the specs and the technicalities, it doesn't even do 10-bit video, man. The Sonys are freaking blowing everyone out the water around that time with the mirrorless.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of like 2016 to 18 era, that like if you were video, it kind of just made more sense to be Sony at the
100%.
time. But having come from Canon, I did miss Canon colors. I love Canon colors.
Canon colors are great, man.
Once you invest in an ecosystem, you're there. So now
out.
I'm Sony. But yeah, sorry, what were you saying about Canon colors?
Yeah, Canon colors are brilliant. But I have to say, Sony has its own appearance and its own aesthetic that I really like as well. The sensor just is a little bit more video focused, and I think Canon produces better quality images for photography. I have the 5C, which is a cinema camera, and I have to say sometimes it's a little bit too sharp for video, just a tad bit too sharp. It has that commercial look, and you can soften it down in post-production or whatever. I put a shimmer diffuser on. It's kind of my technique. I have a glimmer glass, which does really wonders to the Canon 5C sensor, but that thing shoots at 45 megapixels, man. It's like it doesn't really scale down in video mode. So for example, the C80, which is the new cinema camera they released, that has a 21 megapixel sensor, and usually you would shoot in crop, and I feel like that little bit less resolution actually goes a long way in producing a really nice cinematic image. Kind of just ties it together a bit better. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's not like conventional wisdom would dictate like, oh, the sharper the better, but sometimes the sharpness looks too refined, you know what I mean? And you lose that dreaminess. So
you do.
I agree. And yeah, like I said, I love both Sony and Canon, but being more primarily video focused at the time when I was investing in gear, it just made more sense. Also autofocus at the time, it was a no contest. No
contest.
Yeah. And obviously I love to be in a situation where you have someone doing sharps for you and you don't have to think about focus, but obviously with weddings and events and things, you got to rely on autofocus, and like just being able to touch someone's face on the touch screen and then have them move and it track relatively smoothly, depending on the lens, of course. One of my lenses produces beautiful image, but the focus breathing is like.
And you have the Shinobi as well now for the touch.
The two, which is great because you can plug it straight into the FX3 for camera control, so you can tap focus, you can change preview LUTs, change your ISO, like whatever you need to do on the touch screen.
Has that changed the game for weddings for you?
The
Shinobi,
mainly with the touch autofocus.
The touch autofocus would be huge, man.
Yeah,
that's my biggest limitation on the 5Cs. I can't get the Shinobi 2 to link up with the because you can do it on the FX3. It's not compatible with the Canon.
Right.
So I can't use it, unfortunately.
Firmware update. So.
Yeah, no, bloody hell, Canon. They've released so many firmware updates. This camera was not so good when it first released, and the firmware updates they've done, it's a freaking beast now, man.
I meant the firmware update on the Shinobi.
Oh, okay.
Because the Shinobi will release like compatibility.
Gotcha.
Firmware updates that allows it to send and receive information from different cameras. So maybe try that.
Keep up to date with that. If you see anything, let me know. Canon 5C is what I'm shooting on. What's your favorite focal length?
So it used to be 85, but I've found myself more drifting towards 50 now, just because 85 obviously has more compression and the background's even more buttery, but like sometimes it's almost too much in the sense that you don't get a sense for the environment.
Yeah.
And I think 50's just got that nice amount of compression where you can still appreciate the scene. It depends on the shot, obviously, but I actually like 40.
40's cool. I have a 40 mil.
Yeah, 40's really cool. People often argue about whether like 35 or 50 is like more true to the human eye.
35.
I think 40.
I think 40 as well.
40,
Yep,
yeah.
No, I agree. Just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Get two primes, the 50 1.2 and the 85 1.2 from David Broadway. Yeah, that's easy for you to say. David Broadway has an unlimited supply of money. That's $10,000 just there.
David, I am actually there. My next two, the 51.2 and the 85. Did you say 1.2 85? I don't think G Master does a 1. They do 1.4 and 85.
35 f2 on my Fuji for travel as well. There you go. He's rocking a Fuji. He's rocking a Canon R3, and he's rocking some of the best gear around. I think, David, it's a pretty impressive collection you got there.
Fuji for travel's cool. I do. I wish I had the extra cash lying around for that one, but got to get those G Masters first.
Yeah, I need to get the G Masters first. I need to get more gear. Look, 50 is my favorite. I think 50 is just the epitome of lenses, because 40 does have that standard kind of, this is the human eye, or even 35, say 35, the f2 or f2.8, whatever you have there. That's going to see very similar to how the human eye sees, but you just kind of lose that creative control when you have too much symmetry and too much standard. So I actually shoot on a 24 a lot of the time, because you get that distortion. You kind of use it to your advantage. Early on, so like that photo up there, and I was just experimenting with seascapes. A lot of them I took at 14mm, and the reason I took them at 14mm is because I could accentuate the scene, and I could like just go down to Waterman's Bay, just down the road, and find just rocks, and I could make the rocks kind of expand and look larger. And I kind of use focal length in that way a lot, where I don't really want the scene to be too symmetrical. I do find like 85 makes it a bit too symmetrical for my liking as well. I know 50 is meant to be a very standard focal length, but it isn't in my opinion. Like, it's just kind of like, I feel like 35's your human eye, and then 85's your kind of portrait, and 50 sits in the middle, and being in the middle, it kind of just you can just use it differently. I don't know. I find like I can have a 50 on all day, and yeah, it's not wide, but it's not tight. You know what I mean? And you can kind of blow out the background. You can bring the background. You can do so much with it if you do have that mindset of, let's play around with the aperture throughout the day, and let's not just leave it on 1.4 for the entire time, which a lot of people do.
Yeah, living at 1.4. Shout out to my mate Perry. He always says live at 1.4.
Bloody hell, Perry.
Bloody hell, Perry. You gotta get two people in focus sometimes.
we'll bring Perry on and have a debate.
Yeah, you should bring him on. We'll debate it out. But when I get the 51.2, then it might be living at 1.2. But
you got
next door.
You paid for it, man. You can't get off what you paid for.
I know. I agree with you, and that's why they call it the nifty 50, right?
Yeah, man.
There's some people that and I'd love to be one of them, but I just sometimes need to be wider, especially in the run and gun situation. But there are some people that put a 50 on and shoot on it all day. And
I probably could, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I love 50mm. I've been using 50mm my entire life. Like, that was the first lens I've got, and I've played around with it, and I've just always come back to a 50. But I do find appreciation in other focal lengths as well. Like, I wouldn't just have a 50 on, but. Yeah.
So at the moment, what I'm using biggest hit to the wallet in recent memory is I'm using the 28-70 f2, which is supposed to be the best of both worlds. You can zoom, but you can still get stops f2, and
everyone's hating on that lens lately.
The Canon or the Sony?
I don't know. I've seen online. I've never used one, so I don't have any opinion. But everyone's started loving it.
Yeah,
and everyone's hating on it. And I'm like,
I can't speak for the Canon one, but I do like this. I do like the Sony one. Obviously, it's not gonna be 1.2 or 1.4, but just having that flexibility in a run and gun scenario and having character, it's not like the 24-70 2.8 is a super clinical lens. It's just, it's sharp. 100%. Everything looks correct. It's got, some nice vibrance and contrast to it, but it doesn't really have character. It's just pretty cold. Whereas the 28-70, you can do some arty stuff with it. When you punch into 70 and open to f2, I was running some interviews like that the other day of like this emotive stuff, just looking straight down to camera. Like, I don't know, there's something there, you know what I mean? Like,
it's got that creative twist on it.
It does, yeah. The flares are a bit weird sometimes, but you can't win them all. Like, having 28-70 f2 is
pretty incredible.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But each their own. Like, it works for me, but I do want the 51.2 just as a.
I really want the 51.2 as well, man. Yeah, I think, look, I'm going to say it, people hate on it because it's getting clicks at the moment because everyone started off loving. Social media is horrible, man, because this is the thing. It's like people try and contradict what other people are saying because contradiction is part of the viral element. So people, people will be like, this lens is amazing. And then someone will come along and be like, I hate this lens. And then that kind of gets clicks and it just goes back and forth. And that's why people are hating on it. I think people are a bit excessive with it. I don't hate on stuff. I'm not all for the viral element. I'm for the true stuff. We're the realists.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I just try not to get into that elitist mindset. Like if it works for you and it makes your client happy, there's no reason that you shouldn't do it.
Completely agree.
If you have the time in your day to put down other people's creative decisions,
you're a loser.
Don't hate on too much time. Like go and create something instead.
I agree. No, you shouldn't hate on other people.
But constructive criticism's different.
No, constructive criticism, but it's more, I guess I'm talking about, it's like, someone coming online just being, I hate that. So they can get views and get likes. And that's very common nowadays, is because that's what gets clicks and that's what gets tractions.
Yeah.
We won't dive into it. Let's go back to gear. 50 is my favorite. 50 is one of your favorites. 85 is one of your favorites as well. The 28 to 70, you can see why you love that lens. I mean, f2 at that zoom. One lens that I tried that I thought I was going to hate that I actually really like, and that's probably, as much as I want the 51.2, I'm probably not going to get the 51.2. I'm probably going to buy a second body. A fourth body and one of these lenses because it just makes sense for what I want to do, and that's the Canon 24 to 105 f2.8, and I was really surprised by that lens because I thought I was going to hate it. But I loved it, man. And it was the same thing. I was like, this is just going to be too standard. It's going to be too perfect. There's not going to be any twist to it. And I was so wrong, man. Because like you can zoom into 105 on that lens at f2.8. Bloody hell, man. You can get some nice bokeh. I didn't realize how much that focal length push from like 80 to 100, how much more compression it gives you. And that 2.8 on that 100 end, you can get some, like I did some ring shots and the ring shots were incredible, man. Like I've never taken anything so artistic and nice in my life because I was able to put an LED bar and then I was able to zoom into 100 and I was just able to get this ring in perfect detail. I'll see if I can pull it up for you because it surprised me so much. And like even the bokeh, it had like a little quirk to it. So it wasn't so basic and standard. Like it was a really cool kind of lens to play around with.
Yeah, that amount of compression on a small object like a ring would be really cool. Really cool.
Let's have a look.
I love whilst you're trying to find.
I'll see if I can hold it up to the camera.
Yeah, that's wicked.
Yeah, so that's taken at 105 millimeter. I don't know if I can show it.
Can you see?
We'll do it. It'll pop up on the stream. Head to my Instagram maybe, and you'll dig it out. But that was taken at 105 f2.8 with an LED bar.
I love how that's the perfect depth because you've got the stone.
Yep.
The stone in focus and the front side facing part of the band in focus. And I use the
focal length to control the depth rather than the aperture.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is so interesting because I've never done that before.
Because anyone can open the aperture up, right? But not everyone can think in terms
how much do you need?
Focal. Yes.
So I think I was at 100. I might have zoomed just down to 90, but rather than stopping down to like 3.5 or 4 or whatever, I actually used the focal length, and that lens would it surprised me, man, because I was like, I've never done that in my life, but having that much focal range and being able to control your aperture with that, it really opened up my mind. Yeah.
That look, in my humble opinion, that's why that's the perfect depth for this shot. I don't know if you can see, is because everything from the stone to the front band is in focus, and that's all you need to be sharp in this image. And, the buttery background kind of lifts it off. But like I was just saying before, anyone can open their aperture to the maximum and then, put the shutter down or do your ND if you're on video. But not everyone can have the understanding of how aperture interacts with the focal length to get exactly how much of the image you want
Completely agree.
sharp.
Yep.
And that's kind of the next level, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you need to think of aperture and depth in that way, I think, to really push your photography. I think a lot of people struggle and they would just open up their lens wide and just leave it. But if you're taking it one step further, you're going, well, what do I need in focus? You know, do I need the stone? Do I need the detail of the object? And think of depth that way, and kind of always looking at your aperture or looking at your focal length and going, how am I going to manipulate the focal length and depth to control the focal length and aperture to control the depth? That's when you kind of take your photography to the next level, where you're going, we're not just producing images that have that nice bokeh appearance, but we're producing images that actually have what we want to be sharp. And that's something that I learned from watching a lot of high-end wedding photographers. I second shot for a couple of people. James Simmons was the main one I shot for. And I just noticed he was always changing his bloody aperture. And that's when I clicked, and I was like, fuck, he's not just leaving it on 1.2. He's always changing it around, and he's moving his aperture around because he's thinking on the fly, what do I want to have in focus, and what do I want the viewers, how do I want to direct the viewers' attention, and where do I want that attention to fall? And if you can think of aperture that way, you can kind of really understand just how viewers kind of look at the scene, and kind of you can control their focus a little bit more. And I think that's a very high-end way to think of photography.
Yeah, look, and I think everyone's guilty of it, as so am I, like just opening up because you just like, I just want bokeh, and the client loves bokeh, and it makes you look professional. But I think the worst example for me personally was when I was in uni, and I was just doing like a student documentary, and we were trying to do this super emotive interview where there was this handheld shot on 50mm right in this elderly gentleman's face, because you know I love hearing old people's stories and things like that. But not till I got it into the edit, I realized that only his nose or his eye would be in focus, and it's just like, no, you don't need to open your aperture up to the maximum to make it look more cinematic. You actually need to think about the context and what you want in focus. You want both his eyes and his nose and his face in focus. Yes, the background could be blurry, but yeah, and that was just, you know, a lack of understanding on my part.
That's a huge learning experience. And it's great you found that at university, because a lot of people come into the field, you know, and haven't worked that out yet.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't. I certainly was guilty of that, just opening my aperture as wide as possible. Everyone is, you know, like but it's such an addictive thing to do, because you buy a 1.4 lens and you want to stay at 1.4, but look, you're going to use 1.4 in certain situations, but you don't want to have it all the time, because that's going to limit your photography, I think, personally.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was it's really interesting. We actually have a lot of concurrent viewers at the moment, so I just wanted to reach out to the audience. I have no idea who's in here, but we have about 5 viewers going at the moment. A lot of people have jumped in and out. Does anyone have any questions? We're talking about photography and videography. We have a specific focus on weddings and commercial. Mark here has been doing photography pretty much his entire life. He's studied, he's been in the professional field, he's worked for many different clients. So I would say this guy's a bit of an expert, and feel free to ask questions.
Keeps calling me I blush every time. I blush every time.
Well, when do you consider yourself an expert? You know, because like this is the thing. It's like you obviously you're a full-time filmmaker. You do it full-time, and you've been doing it. You know, you studied. You've been full-time for a couple of years now. You've been chipping away at it slowly for a long time. Like when do you call yourself an expert in photography and videography? Because it's a hard thing to kind of know, because I don't think we're ever going to master the craft entirely, because there's so many different facets and so many different varieties of things to practice and do as a photographer. You know, you might master wedding photography, but you might not master commercial photography, for example. But there's a certain point where you need to just start to interact with your clients differently and actually go, I am the expert here, and you know, I'm not going to be an asshole, but I'm going to position myself in a way that I'm actually going to say my professional input, because I do know what I'm talking about. You know, like have you kind of found that kind of changeover, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, look, there's a certain amount of confidence that you have to carry when interacting with your clients and making it, you know, feasible for it to be a full-time thing and you know, demand the rates that you're worth. But from an artistic point of view, I don't know if I'll ever be ready to call myself an expert, because I just there are icons in the film video world that I look up to that have made brilliant films and then have made films that weren't received so well and they make mistakes, and there's
100%.
always something to be learnt. So even if
I love that
for
mindset.
some reason if fate willing I made it to Hollywood, and became this big time director, I would still be apprehensive to self-describe myself as an expert, because there's still mistakes to be made, there's still things to be learnt, and there's still things you can always do better.
But that's what makes you an expert, is having that, but seriously, it's having that approach to art, because the thing as an artist and what matures you as an artist and for me personally puts you in that position as a professional, as an expert, or someone who does command, really high rates, is understanding that your approach isn't always going to be the best approach, and there's always something else to learn. You need to have that open mind, because that's what being a creative is. You need to always take inspiration from other people, and you always need to be willing to evolve and change. Like, the thing that I hate the most is when you might see a photographer who's been in the game for 15 years, and they'll come on and they'll be like, oh, I've been doing photography for 15 years. I know how to do it better than you. And it's like they haven't changed in 10 years, you know what I mean? And now their way of doing things might be a little bit outdated, to be blunt. But it's having that mindset that you're never going to change and evolve that will inevitably limit you, not only as a creative, but as a business owner. As a business owner, you always need to be open-minded to evolving and changing and learning new things, right? And to kind of experimenting and playing with different things. And I think that's what differentiates someone who might just be an amateur to someone who might be a professional,
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've always been a big believer of you only start growing old when you stop learning.
Yes.
Or stop willing to learn.
Yes.
And yeah, so I don't know. I just have apprehensive feelings. I'm very flattered that you call me an expert, but I just have apprehensive feelings about that word, because I feel that feels like.
Let's say professional.
Okay, thank you.
He's a professional.
It feels like you've completed it, right? You've completed the game to 100%.
That would be a master.
Yeah, that would be a master. And
a master of photography. But I know people who've received the title Master of Photography. I know people who've received the title Doctor of Photography. But what is a title? I don't know. We don't need to get into what is a title. You're bloody good.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate
Mark's
it.
bloody good. Ask him some questions, people. Ask him questions. People really like the gear topic.
Yeah.
People were jumping in for that. So I reckon we have about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, let's get nerdy on gear.
Let's get nerdy on gear,
it.
man. So let's dive back into it. So what's your favorite thing about modern cameras? You're obviously some guy, who's kind of been in this industry for a long time. You're just some dude who started off with the little camcorders early on. Now you've become a professional guy, So you've seen a big change, You use cameras throughout your whole adult life as well. So you've just been going. So so what I'm trying to say is you're just some dude who picked up a camera early on, and you've kind of chipped away your whole life at kind of becoming really good at videography, and now you've got to the point where you are a professional. You've seen a huge change in technology. What's your favorite thing about modern cameras?
My favorite thing about modern cameras.
Or what's, maybe we'll put it into the context more. So what I'm trying to kind of frame it is, like you can still produce really good work with like older cameras and older DSLRs, but I think there is a certain limitation that you hit with them, where like with the new mirrorless cameras, for example, the autofocusing capabilities, that's probably my favorite feature. I don't think I could live without eye detection autofocus anymore. Like I've just got so used to using it that I just don't even use my other camera that has not that good capabilities of it, because I just feel like the eye detection AF has just changed entirely the way I've shot. Just like AI has changed the way I shot as well. Like these two technologies have just completely revolutionized how I work as a professional. And that's probably my favorite thing about modern cameras is the eye detection autofocus. It's not as exciting. It's not like the megapixels or the dynamic range. Like I think cameras have been there for quite a while now, like since 2018, really. Like camera sensor and camera technology hasn't really evolved that much, but like what's gotten really good in the last half a decade or decade has been eye detection autofocus. Like the AF is freaking mint now.
I think, okay, now I've had a moment to think about it, and I think that one of my favorite things is how good image stabilization has gotten. Because
so good, man.
I love cinematic movements, and sure, you can't fully replicate a camera on a slider to the same length, but using using the camera, the latest camera's internal stabilization plus the stabilization in your editing software like gyro for DaVinci, you can get some nice cinematic push-ins handheld. If you've got if you've just got a handheld rig with a top handle and you kind of plant your feet and just shift your body in like that, by the time you stabilize it in post, it almost like if that footage was time traveled back to the 90s or even the early 2000s, people would be like, oh, that camera was on a slider, and I
And
love
rails,
that.
yeah.
I love and rails, I love. So I think that's one of my favorites. Having high frame rates really accessible to you can shoot 100 frames in 4K now. Which is, I think sometimes in my personal opinion, a bit overused, the whole speed ramping, slow-mo thing. But the reason it's overused is because clients love it. They love slow-mo. But having that so accessible gives you a lot of creative freedom. But if I had to say one favorite thing, it's the stabilization and being able to make things look a bit more cinematic that way.
That's a good one as well. I think stabilization's definitely come a long way since early DSLR days. Before we unpack that a little bit more, I'm just going to say Rob, who's a good friend of mine, said, give me a crop lens and an incredible scene over an incredible lens and average scene any day. So you're saying that the setting and the lighting and the scene way outweighs the kind of technology you're using, and I agree. I think
100%.
if you have an old camera from even 2005, 2010, if you have a freaking iPhone, if you light that scene good and you make that scene look really nice, any camera's going to do a good job. You can use a film camera from the 1980s and you're going to produce really amazing results. But what new technology allows us to do is open up our creative freedom by having things like the stabilization. And now we don't need to have a full setting set up or a full scene set up with rails and with giant lights or whatever. We can just have a top handle and just slowly push in and then stabilize in post-production, and mixed in with the IBIS and your lens stabilization. It's incredible. It really is incredible. I was really surprised because I was a big gimbal guy for a long time. I loved that gimbal look. And then I moved to a rig. Went Michael Scrow. He's a videographer. He does a lot of video work, and he was saying to me, rig your camera out, because rigging your camera out will balance it. And I held his camera, the Sony FX3, which was rigged out, and I was like, fuck, he's right. It's just having that weight on the camera and having that ability to kind of have more points of contact allows you to stabilize it with your body. And then you're able to use things like the lens stabilization, the digital stabilization on the 5C or the IBIS on the FX3, coupled with your post-production software like DaVinci Resolve, and you're able to have a scene that almost looks like a gimbal. You're not going to be able to get the really long kind of shots, but you're still able to produce quite good work. That's probably better in most run and gun situations.
I went down a similar pathway, man. I still shoot quite a bit of corporate stuff on the gimbal.
Me too.
But my preference is to use the rig because it gives me more headspace to think about framing and lighting. Whereas when you're on the gimbal, you're thinking about, which way can I walk? Am I going to run into anything? Am I going to trip over anything? I need to make my steps really smooth so that there's you minimize that bob. Just being on the rig, you're like, well, I can only move so much, but that frees up your head to go, okay, maybe we should change up the composition or the lighting or something like that. But going back to your friend's comment as well, I completely agree. Gear can only get you so far. It's the scene and your creative choices that really bring it to the next level.
Completely
but it's nice
agree.
to have good gear too.
It's nice to have good gear too. It's nice to have the freedom of having a gimbal and then having a camera rig as well. Like each setup kind of caters to a different situation. Same, the camera rig on run and gun situations, like something like a wedding, where you're constantly moving and adapting and changing situations, I find is much more, practical compared to a gimbal. A gimbal, I find, it works better in people hate me using this word, but I'm going to use it anyway. It's in those cinematic scenarios where you want to kind of construct the scene from the ground up a little bit more. Maybe let's say like a creative portrait session for a wedding couple, and you want to do things like a walking shot of them holding hands, and so you can track them back and you can kind of tell them, hey, this is what we're going to do, and you construct, you kind of follow it. Or in the commercial sense, it might be, you have this scene and you want to have a very smooth shot and kind of introduce a new character. You might come around and kind of use the gimbal to do a reveal. So in different scenarios, the gimbal opens up the creative freedom so much more, but you also lose a lot. Like I find the handheld rig is, if I'm doing event work and I want to have that in the moment action shot, or maybe you're filming a fighting scene and you want to have that camera shake and you want to, you can't do that on a gimbal. So you kind of need both. And this is the hard thing about gear and videography is you just need it all. You kind of need it all. If you're going to be competitive and you're going to like actually cater to clients' work, you need to have the gear, but you also need to understand how to use it and when to use it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think about gear in terms of how can it enhance the quality of my image the most, but feel like what's equally as important is that you need to think about it from a logistical standpoint as well, especially when you're run and gun, because you're just like, how easy is this thing to use? How user friendly is it? Like I recently got a 2-in-1 polarizer ND filter, which sounds off alarm bells in everyone's heads. Like, is there vignetting? Is there color casting? Is there all this stuff?
Is that the KNF?
Yeah.
How do you find it?
I love it.
Yeah, great.
I really love it. Yeah, a little bit of color cast, and if you push it to the end, you'll get some vignette. But it makes me not miss moments. Yeah. Because what I have is right there and it's ready. And because I do a lot of run and gun work, like bringing back to the earlier conversation, the moment takes precedence. I'll live with a little bit of magenta color cast if I don't miss this, this beautiful moment between a couple to be married, or a very emotive documentary interview that you might not have time to sit down and set up and light. And so yeah, that thing's really cool. I've also seen one from H&Y, which I'm thinking about getting, which is like that magnet system.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And they're like, looks even more user friendly because you can unscrew the polarizer and adjust that, and it won't affect the ND at all. And then unscrew and lock, and then you can also magnet a matte box to the front of it, which is nice. Because I find with my ND, sometimes I'm missing the matte box because I'm getting weird flares, and I want to be able to block those out, but I can't fit it around this 2-in-1 thing.
Yeah, a matte box would be really good actually, because that's the one thing that I find. But then it's a whole nother kit and a whole nother set of investment, because then you need those 90mm kind of filters instead to slide them through.
But that's the beauty of this H&Y one, which I haven't bought yet, but I'm thinking about, is because you got the polarizer, the ND, and they magnet on top of each other, and then the matte box magnets on top of that, so they're still variable, and you don't need to slide in the big NDs.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
What I really want to purchase is the C80, the Canon C80. Have you seen their internal NDs?
Oh, internal NDs.
Yeah. It's insane, man. You just you press one button, it's like, shoo. Corey brought it in the other day, and he had a C70, so it's the older version, crop sensor, and I'm a full frame snob, so I'm not going to buy the old. So I never got the C70, and I got the 5C. This is a full frame, and the C70 was a crop sensor, but I did sacrifice things like the internal ND, and the internal ND was it's such a thing. It's such an important thing to have in video, because you're able to just one button, it's like, and then your whole and you don't get that flare, and that flare is a big part of why I hate using the I have a Nissi True Color, very expensive ND filter, but it does still not produce perfect results all the time, and can get a little bit annoying, can't it? But I don't know.
Yeah,
gear's one of those things that you'll just never ever reach the point where you're happy. And I think the only thing you can do is set aside a little bit of money from every job you book and invest it in gear, which is what I do. I divide everything that comes in, I divide it, and then I put a little bit into gear and into marketing, into business, because you're just never going to be happy, are you?
That's a really that's a really intelligent and disciplined way of doing it, because if you just let all the money come in, and you're more subject to the temptations of investing in more gear. Whereas if you're divvying it out, you can stick to that system. I might actually start doing that, because
and how do you set your rates as well?
Yeah.
Because then you're not just thinking about the salary that you're making, but what do I need to sustain my business and grow my business over time?
Yeah.
And I know now from structuring my business like that 50% of what I make is very, it's not even my money. It's, it's like, it's GST, it's tax, it's marketing, and then gear maintenance,
Yeah.
And, then the other 50% gets divided between salaries and myself, really. And, it's really hard to work out, how to structure your prices as a business owner. And I don't know, having that mindset, right, where it's like, I know that I'm going to need to buy gear every year, and I know that I'm probably going to need to spend 10 to 15K a year in order to not only maintain my gear, but to buy new things like lighting or backdrops or whatever. Then if I'm doing, let's just say $100,000 in sales a year, then you need to have 15% of that money going to gear if you want to put 10 to 15K into gear. So I don't know, then you can kind of like structure your pricing a bit more.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to do, man. And that's only something that I've started doing recently. The other thing I've started doing recently is, rather than just paying myself whatever I want, I just pay myself a salary. So I give myself like a consistent amount of money every kind of fortnight, and that kind of has helped structure, the business income and all that kind of stuff.
That kind of like business administration and financial structure is super important. This is especially for sustainability. Once you have a system and you set it on not autopilot, like it still needs maintenance, but it just allows you to get out there and shoot more stuff.
That's the thing that I'm struggling with at the moment, is the bloody emails, man. And it's how do you manage the emails and also do stuff like this, which is create content, I'm sitting on like 40 emails right now. I'm like, I could be going, but that you need to get your process, because I know now that I have my processes in place with Studio Ninja, which is what I just got, and it's all automated and beyond a click, really. You just do one click, so it's not going to take me long anymore. It's just going to be dunk, and then it's done, because you have that automation kind of built in. But having that automation and investing in software like client relationship management portals, or we've lost all our viewers. They love the gear topic, not the business talk. Anyway, we're actually at our limit. It's 1:30. So I'm going to cut myself off. Otherwise, we're just going to keep rambling.
Yeah, I'd love to get into the admin stuff, but it's not popular with everyone. You need it, though.
You do need it. I think we got 3 viewers in the games, but I think we should cut it off, and I reckon I'm going to invite you back, and we should do it. Yeah,
thanks,
I reckon
man.
we should do it again, because that was a great conversation.
Yeah, man.
That was a lot of fun, but I've just gone into the habit of letting these go a little bit too long. So
we'll continue our admin business chat.
We'll start the next one with our business. So ladies and gentlemen, that was Mark. Mark is obviously, as you can see, a very humble person, but he's also a brilliant artist, and he's a professional. He's a professional in the field of videography and photography, and has worked with some incredible clients. He's produced some really amazing wedding work as well. Podcast will be live on YouTube and Spotify later today, so jump in if you are watching it still, which there are a few people. So this will be live, so you can replay it, get the audio version on Spotify and the video version on YouTube. I don't think we need to cover anything else other than that. And Mark's been an incredible guest, so we'll invite him back. Maybe we'll get his friend PPP. What was your friend's name?
Porsche. Fiance.
No, fiance. So no, you said someone else before.
Oh, my friend who lives at 1.4. You want to have the
yes.
aperture argument with him? Perry.
Perry, that's
he's
it.
a great photographer, but it's more of a joke. But we'll bring him on and chat about aperture. Yeah, for sure.
There you go. That would be awesome. So would love to have Perry on, and I'm always open, having more guests on, and Portia as well. Would love to have Portia on, and we can always have more chats. A lot of most people are coming back, have had fun. So anyway, let's wrap it up. So thank you very much, guys. Broadway has said bye. Everyone else is just jumping in. Check it out on YouTube and Spotify later. We're peacing out. Catch ya. I need like a little